Hey, y'all, what's going on? Global Hack Week is underway. My name is Rosendo from MLH. I am happy to be here. It is a wonderful Monday morning. We've got a couple of great guests in the back of the stage with us. Just waiting for everyone to kind of get through the ad block there or whatever is going on prior to you joining the Twitch stream. It looks like people are already in there. I appreciate the compliments on my hat. It is, in fact, sick. I appreciate that, Tom. Well, thank you very much. Where did I get the hat? It's part of the employee onboarding process here at Major League Hacking. So if you are ever lucky enough to work with the amazing folks here, I believe that you would receive one as well. So yeah, awesome. And yeah, it's so great to see so many folks already live and active on the chat. Really awesome. Let me just make sure that I'm actually in the stream here on my other screen. There you go. All right. I appreciate y'all. Let us know in the chat where you're joining from. We always love to see it. We know it's a global hack week, so I'm always very curious to see where folks are actually at from around the globe. All right. Awesome. So I've got some folks from India, of course, always a strong contingent from that part of the world. We've got Wanpa from Seattle, Washington, Vermont, USA. All right, Pakistan, Canada. Amazing. Well, you know what? I love to see it. Obviously, I think the folks at GitHub are going to love to see it as well. So, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce y'all and bring on stage Forrest and Marcus, a couple of GitHub campus experts. And from there, I will just leave y'all to it, let y'all enjoy the wisdom and ingenuity that they will bring to this next stream. So, without any further ado, here is Forrest and Marcus. What's going on, y'all?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rosendo. Yeah, I love seeing everybody here in chat. We have so many people from India, so good evening to everybody there. Anybody in North America, good morning to you. I guess it's good afternoon now, unless you're on the West Coast. But yeah, Marcus and I are coming from the GitHub Campus Expert Program to spend the next hour with you kind of going through some JavaScript game development. We have a lot of really cool stuff to go through. But before we get started, I just want to give us a little bit of an introduction of who we are. And so myself, yeah, my name is Forrest. I'm from Ottawa in Canada. I did see someone in the chat also from Canada, so hello to wherever you are as well. I've done quite a lot in the game dev ecosystem. I work on a game called Valoran. I also do a lot of stuff at my university with game development, and so I've done quite a few game jams. I really enjoy doing like Ludum Dare, Global Game Jam every year, but also running game jams. And so this is one of the things I was super excited to hear from Marcus that we were able to kind of like have experience on together is running game jams at our university and kind of hearing from other students how they learn stuff. And so yeah, actually, Marcus, I'll pass it over to you. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Marcus, and well, I'm also interested in game dev. I've been doing game dev since high school. I do it most on my spare time, and I do some other open source. Maybe you've seen the Discord button Needle and those threads. That's one of my projects that I've made. And yeah, I also like participating in game jams a lot. Right now I'm participating in Ludum Dare, which is another big game jam. Which yeah, I encourage everyone to check out. It's a great thing. Yeah, do you wanna?
Yeah, and actually, wait, can you tell us a little bit about your Ludum Dare entry and like kind of what you've been working on this weekend?
Right. So Ludum Dare, if you don't know game jams, it's you have like 48 hours to 72 hours to create like a game in a very short amount of time. And specifically, or this time, it usually is around a theme. And so this time, the theme in Ludum Dare is delivery. And so we were thinking a lot, what can we do with delivery? You can have like a pizza delivery game or like a post delivery game. We were thinking, well, what better time than April to create a Christmas game? So we thought to make a Santa delivering packages down chimneys game, and it's always stressful to be in these like game jam things because you always run out of time. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll make the deadline by tonight. But yeah, it's good fun. I encourage everyone to try out game jams.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some people in chat mentioning that they just submitted a Ludum Dare game. So yeah, congratulations on
Awesome.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to have like Global Hack Week game be right after Ludum Dare, because Ludum Dare is one of the largest game jams that happens. I think it's 3 times a year around the world, and so really cool to have the enthusiasm coming off that. And I think one of the things we're going to be talking about in our workshop today is this idea of how we think about design when we're doing game jams and scope and all of this kind of stuff. And so if we can get Marcus's screen shared, we'll start taking a look at how we're going to run through the workshop today and what we're going to be doing. And so essentially what we have and what we want to focus on today is working on a game that's already been, it already has a little bit of the foundation there. And so it's going to be a JavaScript game. It's going to be pretty similar to Flappy Bird. I'm not sure if we can see Marcus's screen just yet, Rosendo. If we can just get that
there we go.
perfect. Oh, awesome. Now, Marcus, if you want to take a second, actually, I'll try to see if I can find the link here. If we can get the link to this repository put in chat as well, just so other people can make use of it. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is using this repository as a template so that we can all go and add some code to this project and make some design changes, some mechanic changes. And so we'll get that put in chat in just a minute or two. And so, Marcus, you want to just take us through the repository, just kind of show us what we're going to be doing here?
Yeah. So this is a repository that's made by Sam Ronsky, and it's supposed to be a sort of a what's it called, Flappy Bird clone. And it's in 3D, and it's all JavaScript, and it's using Babylon JS, if you're familiar with that. If you're not, that's fine too. We're going to go through some of it. So here's the game right now, how it looks. And yeah, make sure everyone, go to the link and make sure you're logged into GitHub, because we're going to get started. And yeah, it's going to be great. So yeah, so here we can play the game. And as you can see, we have our little cube in the middle here. And when I click the mouse button, it goes up. And if I don't click anything, and we have some gravity that pulls me down. And yeah, the goal is to survive as long as possible, I guess. Right now, you can see immediately that the score is not working. That's something we're going to look at. And if we fail here, we get sent back to the start, and we have some cool messages here. Zipline.
All right, perfect. And also, Marcus, if you want to just take the link that you have there in the browser from actually the game itself, and then maybe if you toss it in our private chat, we can get that out to people so they can play it first. So we have a few learning outcomes for today. And one of the ones that is really cool is as we go along and develop our game, we're going to be making commits to our GitHub repository. And every time that we make a commit is automatically going to deploy the code so that you can copy this link just like Marcus did and share it with others. And so that's what one thing I'm super excited about and super excited to see is if we can get people to be sharing their game as we're going along, that'd be really awesome to see what people are working on. Okay, and so we also have a few other learning outcomes that we want to do today. And so we're going to be starting with our template repository. We're going to be going into Codespaces a little bit. Marcus and I are actually going to be doing some peer programming together. We're going to use live share inside of Codespaces. And so this is going to make it easier for us to be able to work on things at the same time. One thing we wanted to try and prevent during this stream is that sort of thing that happens where you're one person is coding by themselves, something goes wrong, and then half an hour of the stream is us trying to figure out what's going on, what the problem is. And so hopefully, if we're live sharing, that leaves one of us to be able to fix it while the other person's talking. Okay, awesome. So I think we can get started here. Marcus, can you take us through how we can get started with this repository?
Yeah, so if you go to the link to my repository here and you make sure that you are logged in with your GitHub account, you should be seeing this use this template button here, which is green. And so you want to click that, everyone, and then press create new repository. And it's going to prompt you to make your own repository that is cloning this so you can get your own CubeFly game. You can name it whatever you want. I like these auto-generated name a lot, so I'm going to go with Upgraded Spork. And then you can make it public and make sure to click this include all branches. That's going to make sure that when you add changes to your game, you're going to get an URL automatically generated for you like this, so you can test out your own changes as you work on the game and share it with others. So yeah, make sure you click that.
And I saw one good question in chat. Someone asked if we use the open source bootcamp CubeFlyer or the one from Marcus Otter. Now, we used the one from Marcus Otter. We made some changes to the documentation and just how the presentation of it was done. We didn't actually change much of the, or if any of the code itself. I think we like ran a formatter on it. So it doesn't make too much of a difference. But our version, it just has some stuff that's better for the context of what we'll be going through. But in the end, it shouldn't matter too much from the code side. Well, actually, I guess it wouldn't automatically deploy to GitHub pages, so best to do the Marcus Otter one.
Right. If you do the Marcus Otter one, you will get the URL automatically generated. Otherwise, you can make that as a challenge of your own and try to set that up for yourself, because that's also not too difficult with GitHub pages. So yeah, once you are on this, you can click Create Repository from Template, and you should see your own repository being generated here.
Perfect.
There we go. And now you should see your own username and whatever you name the repository here, and that's how you know you can make whatever changes you like, and it won't affect anyone. So to get started with the code, we are gonna want to click the code button here and create a code space. Do you want to go through Codespace a little bit?
Yeah, I can talk through it a little bit here. And so essentially what a Codespace is it's going to be sort of like VS Code, but it's using Microsoft servers as the backend. And so for our case, we're not actually using too much of the functionality of what it's actually capable of. Codespaces is super helpful when you're working on projects with maybe like a backend server or something like this. But what it will allow us to do is use some of the extensions that VS Code has, and most specifically, we'll have live share. And then it will also allow us to do live share, but also do some editor formatting stuff as well. I personally use Codespaces quite a lot at my university when I'm getting like students to work on projects, and the reason for this is because trying to get like a student with a Windows computer to install Python and npm on the same computer, not having conflicting versions or something, super difficult when you're trying to onboard people. But with Codespaces, it becomes a lot easier, and so and also it's just kind of cool that we can use it for preparing this workshop. And actually, I guess one more thing I will mention about Codespaces in this context is that we're going to be using an extension that allows us to host a server of the game as we're developing. And that means that every single change we make is going to be automatically deployed. We just open it in a new tab. We can go to the site, and then we can see the game and like iterate on it very quickly. And I mean, just a little bit of extra theory when it comes to game design and development. Iteration is super important. You want to be able to take your idea, make some quick tweaks, change some numbers, add a new character name, and then see it very instantly. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do when you have fast iteration times. And so hopefully we'll get to explore a little bit of that today.
For sure. Yeah. So now we have our code space set up here. If you follow along, you should have click the code and the code space, and it should open a new tab, and it should look like this for you. So we can get started on. We can actually, we can try setting up that live reload you talked about. So we have the extension. It's called Live Server, and if you open the game folder here and press the right-click the index.html, it should say open with live server. So if we press that, it's going to open in a new tab, hopefully. There we go. It's going to give us a unique URL. And this is not a URL you can share with others, because this is going to be unique to your GitHub account. So you need to be logged in as yourself to play the game here. I think there is a way to share it, but yeah, don't. That's not something we're going to go into right now.
And just one more thing I'll mention on this topic. It's a little bit weird that we're taking like an index.html, we're making a server out of that, and then when you go to it, it's a game. And so we're going to be using a framework that allows us to pretty easily write stuff like adding cubes in JavaScript and adding like text at the top of the screen to say score. And we're not actually be doing so much HTML ourselves. And so even though you might be used to web development where you have to do like a lot of divs and everything like this, actually, if you want to, Mark, if you want to open the index.html,
Yes.
file, we can see right here that it's actually going to load in the scripts for Babylon. If you just scroll down a little bit here.
Right here.
Yeah, exactly. So it will load in the sort of like game framework that we'll be using. And then everything else in the HTML is just preparing it so that we can start writing in JavaScript. All right, and actually, if you scroll down to the bottom of there, we can see quite a few of the files that that's going on. And so some of the names here, we have stuff like player.js, mainmenu.js, and when I look at this implies to me that we have maybe some player logic. So maybe when the physical player, the user hits the space bar, maybe inside of the player.js file, that's where it will do some of the work to figure out what should happen to the cube. Or similarly on the main menu, if there was like a button or there was some type of interface we need to do, we'd probably put it in there. Yeah, so Marcus, you want to take us through some of the files and maybe just show us what's behind the scenes there?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. We can, yeah, let's do that. So we can start at the constants, for example. So this is a constant.js, and we can see that it's in the source folder, which has all of our scripts, which we will be working on. And so let's start with the constants one. So we can see we have a gravity here, and it's 9.8 gravity constant. That's good. And we can see that we have the flight force, which it says it's the force applied when we hit the fly button. And we also have some greetings, which supposedly is these messages. As you can see, this is a whole new dimension, and we have that string here as well. So maybe we can try something. Maybe we can try changing this. Maybe we don't want all of these. Maybe we want what do we want? Hello world is a good one, of course.
Yeah, let's give that a go.
Yeah, let's try that. And I am gonna hit Control S to save this file. And if everything works well, this should reload automatically. But maybe it didn't actually. Okay, sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine too. Then you have to refresh it manually, and then it should update like that.
All right, and I also just want to mention that if you go back to our GitHub repository that we just created, let's take a look at the issues at the top of the screen here. And so what we've actually done to help prepare this repository for you to kind of take it and go forward is we've automatically created issues as soon as you create the template repository. And so, Marcus, if you want to just go take a look inside of there, I think we have one that talks about the greetings a little bit. So let's take a look at that.
Yes, that's a very good point. So we have click the issues tab here, and we scroll down, and we can see the first one is add more greetings. And so we can see, okay, there are a number of greetings in the constants file. Let's add a few more to introduce some extra variety to the game. So that's something we already kind of looked at, but we can also actually said to add more, not to remove all of them. So let's undo that, and let's do it properly. Let's say hello MLH this time.
That's pretty cool.
And now we're refreshed automatically. Look at that. So, well, we don't see it now because now it's random. So if
it has to be random. So let's click it a few times. Let's see if we can get
there.
There
We go.
Hey, all right, perfect. And cool. Also, just for the sake of fun here, I was curious, what happens if you change gravity to be like positive 9.8 instead? What happens then?
That's a good idea. I'll probably got the plus. There we go. So let's set that and let's try playing the game. There we go. I was upside down. Sweet.
So this is one of my really favorite things about game design is that it's really fun tweaking numbers and see what happens. So I think like in game jams I've done in the past when you're making a game and like you have like this path you're going down, it can often be fun just like either on purpose changing a number or by accident changing a number. Some weird behavior happens and you're like, oh, now the game is just going to be like this. And so I highly recommend that to people this week. If you're going to be working on a game, definitely try tweaking numbers a lot. It's a lot of fun.
For sure. And that's also ties into like the fast iteration you talked about earlier. Like when I save the file now with Control S, we can see that the tab refreshes automatically. So I can just change whatever like this and save, and it automatically works. And now I can jump much higher than I was able to do before because I doubled the jump thing. So yeah, for sure. Like tweak numbers and iterate fast, and that's really where the fun is in game development, or a lot of it anyways. Just tweaking a lot.
Absolutely. All right, so I think maybe let's hop into the code a little bit. Let's try adding maybe a little bit of something else, making some other changes to what the game is doing. Do you have any thoughts about maybe what we could do?
Right. Maybe we can look at the issues. Maybe there's something to guide us. I can't remember actually. We can close this issue because well, it's done now. We did it. And we can see. Okay, we have changed score font to something not Comic Sans. Maybe that's something we could look at. Scoreboard is currently being drawn with the Comic Sans font. Of course, Comic Sans is wonderful, but apparently this issue needs us to change it. So let's look at that.
Just before we do that, I did see in chat one person asking how we do the live preview. So do you want to just show how we can like live preview index.html again?
For sure. So if you have your what's called Codespace open and you you need to find the index.html file and then right click on it and open with live server. That should be pre-installed for you. If you don't see that button, something might have been wrong with the extensions. Then you're gonna have to install live server, this extension. And you can get this in your VS Code as well. This isn't just a Codespace thing. You can also use this in other editors.
Now, one thing
yeah.
I will mention just for clarity as well, just in case, we do have to use Codespaces to do this because so for example, if you go to GitHub repository and hit period, it's going to bring up a VS Code window, but that VS Code window is just front end visible. It doesn't have a backend that it's able to use extensions with. And so you do have to make sure that you are working inside of Codespaces or locally on your computer. But yeah, it looks like it's all resolved there, so we can continue on.
All right. So let's try to find this Comic Sans. So where could this be? Well, it's in the, let's see. So it's a score. So let's see, barrier. It's probably not that. That's probably like the pipes. Okay, game object. Okay, maybe there's a HUD. That sounds pretty good. Heads up display. And we can see. Oh, here it is. Comic Sans. Fantastic. So, what font should we use? Do you think? For font family?
Times New Roman.
Times New Roman, of course. One upgrade. Times New Roman. That's perfect. Okay, so save that. And there we go. Score is now updated to Times New Roman. That's looking
Awesome.
Great. All right.
Now, one thing I was also kind of thinking, maybe the way that I would approach that same problem where I'm looking on how would I find in the code where to change the score is what I would probably do is I would go to the search on the side of VS Code and I would look up the word score because it has to be somewhere in the code base where it says that. And then I'd be able to trace back from there. So maybe if you want to look it up here, if you just type in score.
That's a perfect idea. So let's say we're in the constants and we want to find the score. We can do search for score here. And it's going to find a lot of it. But if we close the other stuff, here we go, the JavaScript files. Here we can see the HUD is actually referenced a lot, which, yeah.
Yeah, so and right there we can see font as well. So maybe another thing I'd search for is font. Especially on this project, one thing I will mention is that it is good to take a look around and kind of explore it a little bit, kind of see what's going on. And actually, Marcus, I did have some questions as I was looking through the code base myself. And so maybe we can run through a few of the answers quickly. So one thing I did see in one of the files, it talked a little bit about this idea of delta time. Could you explain that a little bit?
Right. Yeah, we could definitely do that. So we have, I think, let's find a file with some delta time. Should be here. Yeah.
And also maybe if we just close the terminal at the bottom, just so it's a little bit bigger to see stuff.
There we
awesome.
Go. Okay, so this is the player, and yeah, delta time is well, a concept that is very relevant in all of game development. It basically exists in every single engine, and well, we need a good way to visualize this because it's has a little bit of math involved. But basically, if we say that the player should always move 1 unit. So we have FPS, right? And that's frames per second. And basically, you can think of this as being 1 frame. So update is basically 1 frame. So the frame starts here, and then it ends like here. And then depending on how many frames frames per second you have, that's how many times update is going to run every single frame. And so you can imagine if we say this velocity. Actually, I wanted to move the player. Let's just try this. See if we move the X position with maybe let's say 1, we can comment this other stuff out. Let's see if this actually. So this would change the player's position. Add 1 to it every frame. So we can save that. See what happens. That might be super fast. Okay, yeah, that's just disappearing. So maybe we can add like something 100th of a second or something, or not a second, but yeah, there we go. So now it's constantly moving. However, as I mentioned, this is dependent on how many frames per second we have. And so, for example, if we play this on a phone, which by the way works, you can try that on your phone with the URL. But yeah, if we run on a phone, we might not get as many frames per second as I'm getting here because I have probably 144 right now. Frames per second. And so for me, this would run 144 times per second. But for someone on a phone that might have like 30 FPS or even lower, it's only going to run 30 times per second. So on a phone, you're going to see that this cube is moving much, much slower. So it changes the game depending on how many frames per second you have. And this is obviously something we don't want in games because it would be very unfair if like you have a game where you have to dodge a bunch of obstacles, and then if you have the better PC you have, the more difficult the game would be, because it got faster, right? Because the update would change much more often. So what we usually do in game design or in game development, we have this thing called delta time, which is basically the frame that, or no, it's a time between frames, right? So this is the time that passed between the previous time we called update and now. And so if we multiply by that, now we're going to have to, because that's a pretty small number. If I have, actually, I can bring up a calculator. So if I have 144 frames per second, actually we need to divide it over 144. We expect the delta time to be about 0.0069. That was not planned, but okay, cool. Great. And so if we multiply by time dot delta time, well, first of all, we're going to notice that it's a lot slower, like very much slower. Can't even see it move. Oh, I can actually. Okay. So we're going to have to increase this. But as soon as we multiply by delta time, this is going to be the same speed on every single device. And that's something important to keep in mind when you're developing for, well, basically anything really, because you don't want the frame rate to decide how hard your game is or and stuff like that. So yeah, that's
And
something
actually, just
to
like
keep in
an
mind.
interesting thing about that, I've definitely seen games in the past that didn't take this into consideration. So maybe if you're making a game for some old Nintendo console, and then when you run it on an emulator, everything just goes either super fast or maybe the physics is messed up or something like this. Because when you're making a game, especially console games, you're making it for a very specific piece of hardware that will always be the same. But yeah, Marcus, as you mentioned, you have a 144 hertz screen, mine is 60, and so for me it would be a completely different experience without delta
Right.
time in the mix.
Right. Yeah. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So I'm going to remove that because that was mostly for show. We have some good velocity setup here already. Yeah.
And then actually another point I wanted to sort of just add on there, you mentioned a little bit about how different game engines do a lot of different things. And I kind of want to talk about just for a minute or two about why we're using JavaScript instead of a game engine. And so from a lot of my experience, I really like making games with game engines, and I've always really enjoyed making games without game engines too. And so game engines, what we mean by that is maybe like Unreal Engine or Unity or Godot. These are like some of the really big ones that are out there right now. Or similarly, you might use a framework to be able to do some of this stuff. And so we're using Babylon. There's also p5.js to do more graphical stuff. Processing is also another sort of like domain specific way to do games. And so what we're seeing here is in some ways quite similar to what a game engine might do. We have like this update function that's going to run once every frame. We can see we have an end game function a little bit below that might be called by an engine or a framework when the game is supposed to be over. And so a lot of the ideas that we're learning here are can translate quite well to an engine. However, a lot of the time engines get you to code within their own ecosystem. And so essentially you might boot up Unreal, you might boot up Unity, code inside of the editor. Then you'd go to like your scene, you'd see everything maybe 3D or 2D, so you drag some circles onto the screen and do some stuff. Whereas the approach that we're taking is that we want to do it all from a sort of code editor context. And so when we say we want to add a cube to the screen, we're going to say that in code. We're not going to say it within like a visual editor. And actually, Marcus, you want to just take a quick look for how we go about adding a cube or doing some of the stuff on there?
Yeah, sure. We can try to find. So actually, this is in the init function here. So here we can see we have, we are creating so we're accessing the Babylon JS library here, and it has a mesh builder built in, and then we say create box. And I presume this is the name, and then we have some options that we pass here. So here we can actually try it and see if I'm right. So we have box options, and it says width, height, and depth. Let's just make them all twice as big. And even the comment says here, that's kind of cheating, but let's see. So now it should be twice as big, which is making this
Nice.
game very, very difficult all of a sudden.
Yeah.
After
And I
meeting
mean,
here.
just on this topic, one of the sort of outcomes that we want to see from people working on this as a base is experimenting with these numbers, trying to make stuff bigger, make stuff faster, change stuff color. And actually, if we could just take a second and switch over to my screen, I just want to show off a quick video from a game jam I ran a little bit ago. And so this was a game jam I ran. I actually built the game framework for this. It's very simple. And we started out with just Pong. And so just imagine you have one paddle on the left side, one paddle on the right side. One of them is controlled by an AI, and there's a ball going in the middle. And so just take a look at some of what people created. So there's Pong with a lot of balls. We have this one's more like a brick breaker kind of thing. This person made this pretty cool puzzle out of the mechanics. This person went they took our Pong game and then made their own physics engine about a spaceship. Here's a falling one where you have to dodge some stuff. Here's a really fast version of the game. And so the point that I sort of want to make, what's this? Got very loud for me. The point I want to make with this is that even though we're starting out with a sort of a pretty simple Flappy Bird, you have a cube moving up and down. When it comes to coming up with some ideas, exploring a little bit, there's a lot of opportunity for you to go and just be creative. And so what I often start off by saying is try to figure out how to make a second object in the screen and figure out how to control that. And the reason for this is because if you have that, then you can start translating that to have a second input on the keyboard. And maybe now you have the ability to have a second player play the game. But in doing that, you have to touch a few different parts of the system. You have to touch the inputs so that you can control a second object. You have to touch some physics, since you have to change how the second object is working. And there's some items there. Or maybe similarly, you change it so that there's no walls there anymore, but now there's other cubes that are coming in from the other side of the screen that you have to dodge. And so start by being creative. Start by thinking, if I have this as a foundation, what can I add on top of it to make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exciting? And then start trying to do that. And along the way, you're going to find that there's even more and more that you can you can try out to come up with some pretty unique and emergent mechanics. Marcus, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. And that also ties into the challenge that we have for this Hack Week. So there is a, if you go to the Global Hack Week main page and you click challenges, there is actually yeah, as my screen. Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay,
there
you
is
want to
a
make
build
maybe a bit
your
bigger.
own version of CubeFly. Yeah.
Perfect.
I think your screen is on right now. Yeah. So yeah, cool. And so we encourage you to be as creative as you can and make your own sort of version of CubeFly. Maybe you want to change the cube to be a rocket or something. Maybe you don't really want. Maybe you want to change the physics altogether. Maybe you want to add some cool combinations with scores and change. You can, yeah, the sky's the limit basically with game development and creativity. So.
Well, to be
Yeah.
specific, the sky is not the limit, because right now you lose if you go above the sky. You can take that. You can take that limit completely away. Oh yeah, you're the sky can be just a start of your game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now I'll just adjust a few things that I'm seeing here in chat. I am seeing some people having some issues with Codespaces. This is something I've experienced before, where maybe something doesn't load or there's a little bit of difficulty. We're using Codespaces just because it often gives a one-click way to get started. But if you are having difficulties, don't worry. You can always get started by doing this locally in your computer instead. So you can clone the repository. You can do stuff there. There are a few extra steps that we're not able to walk through. But if you are experiencing issues, just watch along for now, kind of see what we're going over, and then approach it again later, just from maybe starting out a little bit fresh, and then it should be all right. And then I'm also taking, someone asked if you can fork the repository. Please do. Also, if you have suggestions on what else could be cool to do with this, that would be really awesome to see. If you make either an issue on the main repository for us to read, or if you want to make a pull request with some suggested changes, that would be awesome. We'd love to see that.
Sure.
So I can look through chat for anything else. Okay. So I think we can probably keep going. So Marcus, do you want to try? So we've done some stuff with the font. So maybe let's go close off that issue and take a look for something else we can do.
Right. Yeah. I saw someone in chat asking to make the cube red, so we can definitely go look into that. That sounds
yeah,
fun.
that should be fun.
All right. So we're done with this. We made it Times New Roman. I made it. Actually, Forrest suggested. I'm not taking any part of this. Times New Roman. Don't shoot the messenger. All right. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, so let's see. So we know the players being built here, and here we can actually see there's a material that's being used, and all of this stuff with Babylon. There we can actually go to the Babylon documentation, because that will probably show or explain a lot of these concepts. So here we have the Babylon JS, which is the
just make the page a little bit bigger, a bit hard to read.
yes. Thank you for reminding me. Oh, and it's not liking that. There we go. Right. So here's the Babylon object, and you can see everything you have on there, and it's a lot to take in, of course. There, they kind of have the your journey starts here, so that's cool. You can start this. Actually, we can maybe link this in chat if you're curious what you can do with Babylon. Then that would be a good way to start with implementing new things. That aren't like already implemented in the project. Cool. So definitely check that out. So yeah, so we were talking about materials, right? So let's go here and find my code space. There we go. Okay, make it a little small.
So actually, just a few more things before we get there. If you can send me, or if you want to start the live share server,
right.
That
Good
way
idea.
I can hop on as well. I do want to show off some of the ideas behind there. Now,
Right.
the first game jam I ever did, we used this engine. It was called Superpowers, and one of the things that was really cool about it is that the main person, they basically start a development server that everybody else connects to with their versions of the engine, and then as you're coding, it live codes on the main server. And so if someone adds something to the game, then everybody will be able to see it right away. And so you're working very much in tandem. Now, the downside of this is that if someone goes and writes some code that introduces a bug, then the whole thing is going to crash. Nobody can run and see what the game looks like. But it was a ton of fun to do, and it really kind of goes along with this idea of peer programming and collaboration on game development. And so as Marcus and I were preparing this workshop and presentation, we were kind of looking through and seeing, okay, like what could we do together? And live share is really a cool way to allow us to do this. Now, I think Marcus sent it to me on Discord. Yes, here we go. So let me pull this open. And I'm going to pull it up quickly, and then we can take a quick look at sort of how it works. And so, Marcus, you want to just quickly show on your end how you started the live share server?
Right. So there was a button down here on kind of the bottom left, and it said live share. I think I can't remember. Now it's gone because I clicked it.
Yeah, I think it's just live share.
And then you get like a thing should open for you, and it should say like copy URL, and you can send that to your whoever you want to connect to your session. So here you can see that Forrest joined, and here you can see him live editing.
I did not
in
our at all.
Yeah. There you go.
So one thing that I've done quite a lot while doing game jams and game development is like a really strong peer programming, where you have this idea of a sort of someone in the front seat of the, like, who's driving the peer programming session, and then the other person being in like the side seat. I forget what that's called in a car, but whatever. Passenger seat. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say Copilot, but then I don't want to like conflate that with GitHub Copilot, which is the same thing but AI. Anyways, I digress. So with live share, it gives us a really cool ability to be able to sort of follow the other person as you're going around. So Marcus is attached to me right now. So Marcus isn't actually changing the files at all. I'm the one that's controlling where we're going. And so as I like scroll up and scroll down, I'm able to do stuff. And so maybe right here, let's go into like maybe the constants. And I would be doing the coding. Marcus would be making suggestions about what I'm doing. And so I decide to make this 50. And then Marcus is like, well, maybe that's not a good idea. I see what you're trying to do, but maybe this is not the right way of doing it. But also, like, my favorite thing about peer programming is when you're trying to do something complex, the person in the passenger seat can be doing Googling for you and trying to figure out maybe like looking into docs. And so maybe if I was doing something with Babylon, I forget what file this is in. Okay, so inside of here, if I was like, okay, well, Mesh Builder is cool with the crate box, but Marcus, could you do me a favor and go look up how to use maybe like create sphere? Let's see if we could change it to a circle instead. What do I need to do for that?
Right, so I can look into that as you do your thing. So maybe we can go into, did I close the Babylon thing? No, here it is. So let's see, actually, I need to look at the code first. So yeah, Mesh Builder, right? So we can maybe search for sphere. I don't know. See if something finds creating a sphere. There we go. And we can see that we need it. So yeah, so this is what you need, and I can well, actually, yeah, I can just copy paste this as a comment, and you can figure it out because I'm just
exactly. So I put in create circle, but Marcus tells me, okay, it needs to be sphere. And instead of box options, we're going to change this over. I'm going to change it to circle options or sphere options, I guess.
Right.
Okay, and then Marcus, could you also find out for me what's the what options do I need for a sphere?
Okay. I can look at that. And let's see. Oh, we have a lot of stuff. We
Okay,
can have all of this. So,
so
well, you can have segments, you can have diameter. So I guess the ones you need is probably diameter, which is a number.
diameter x. So I think we'll do x, y, and z is all 1. And so I think that should define the sphere properly for us. So now that we have this, let's save it and let's go take a look at if we've been able to change it to a sphere.
Cool. Let's see. Well, this is actually. Will this
Is it
work?
going to
No.
work? It may or may not work. I'm very 50-50. We
Ooh,
didn't
actually, you see this? I don't think the port actually works now.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
Okay, so
yeah.
essentially what I'm trying to show off with this is if you were going to be working on CubeFly with a friend over this week, this could be a really good way for you to work on the game together, is to set up live share. One person's in the passenger seat while the other person drives, and you go through and you just add some stuff together. I like doing this with students a lot. I love sitting in the passenger seat when I'm trying to teach something to someone. And so I'm able to watch them. I'm able to see what types of stuff they're doing, where they're getting stuck, and just be able to give feedback on that.
Sure.
All right, is it loading yet?
I don't think it's going to, because I
Oh, yeah,
think when we live share it, I think it closes the.
if you
We could
go
try the
to
live server again. Nope.
okay, that'd be interesting if live share kills that. So yeah, this is us not testing it in production.
Yeah.
If you go to the bottom, there's like a little it says 2, and then there's a tower. Okay, so it looks like it's trying to forward the server. What I would say, just kill the live share. If you click on shared, you can kill the live share server. Sorry, just shared at the bottom there, and then just stop collaboration session. Right. Okay, so that kicks me out. But
and
now it doesn't reload. Okay, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, okay, it does. And we have a sphere.
Okay, so peer programming session complete. Everything worked exactly as it should. Yep. There was no problems with that whatsoever.
Perfect.
Okay. We'll try to figure that out afterwards, and if we can like make some recommendation on how you can have live share working with live server, that would be perfect, so that you can actually work and collaborate with people. Okay.
Right. And otherwise, you have GitHub always to use branches and collaborate, which is also like a great collaboration tool. Which also mentioned that you don't really need live share, even though it's super nice to have like the fastest iteration paces, and especially for pair programming, like you said, it's also possible to just use branches and pull requests and have all of the collaboration on GitHub, which works well. This is how we are doing my game jam right now for Ludum Dare. So yeah, it works.
So what I find when I'm doing that with a team, we're doing a game jam together. At the beginning, we start with our branches. Someone's implementing this feature. Okay. Oh, we merge everything. Is all perfect. But then you get to like 3 hours before submission, and then everybody's like, okay, we're just pushing the main. It doesn't matter anymore. There's no more branches. We don't have time. And so, okay, let's also see if we can figure out how to make it red, because we're part way there. We made it into a circle, but let's see if we can make it red as well.
That should be this, surely. So we have a material and we have a color, and it says color white, and the cube is, or the sphere is white right now. So if we just make this red like that, or was it caps? No, like that. Let's see. Otherwise, we might have to consult the documentation. Let's give this a refresh, and there we go.
Awesome.
A red ball.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, so we're able to make some assumptions here, and that's kind of like one of the cool things about engines like this, is that they try to be very ergonomic and user friendly. They try their best to make it so that what you think is a default is the way that's going to work. And so you get a little bit of a benefit where we already have the foundation. We're able to start. We're able to look at how the code is already written. But then as you start to go and want to add some more mechanics that get a little bit more complex, you're going to start to have to need to touch more places at once. And so, for example, we're just touching this init function. We're just deciding how this ball is going to be created. However, if you wanted to add something that was like, maybe you control a few different balls, or maybe you change how like the pipes work or something, you might need to be touching stuff around a few different places in the code base. And so for that, what I tend to do is I try my best to read through a little bit of the files to get like a little bit of context on what each file is doing. And so a little bit of information, but I don't necessarily want to understand the whole thing right off the bat, because there's a lot of lines of code there, and that's a lot of context you would need to understand. Oh wait, we got someone in chat. Thanks for making the sphere red making the sphere and red. We've got you. No worries. Very very good suggestion. Very good suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to think what we can do for like the next 10-ish minutes here. I'm thinking we could either go down and take a look a little bit more at code. We can also play around with Copilot a little bit. Maybe take a look at what else we could add through some AI generated content. What do you think we should do, Marcus?
I mean, maybe we could combine them and make the last 10 minutes to develop with Copilot.
Yeah.
And I see Juan is on board with that. So that is not pre-installed, and to use Copilot, I think there's a correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a free trial to use Copilot.
Yeah, so essentially how it works is that Copilot is offered by GitHub. You can pay for it. However, I'm thinking that many people here are students. You can actually sign up for the student developer pack. And so this is something that GitHub offers. If you're a student, you're able to sign up for it for free. It will give you access to a ton of different tools and resources. And then on top of that, it gives you free access to Copilot. And so Copilot is a really cool tool. It uses Codex to sort of like take a look at your code and make suggestions based on what it sees. And so you can add some documentation that will say like maybe create a ball of this color next, and then it will see the context above. It'll be able to do that. And so let's maybe I want to kind of like play around with this a bit. Let's see what it can come up with. Now, actually, one thing I will mention as well is that it's not infinitely smart. There are things that it's not able to do as easily. And so, for example, as I was mentioning, if we wanted it to touch a lot of different functions, it wouldn't really be able to know where to go right away. We would have to say, okay, we're going to make the change in here. We're going to add a comment so that it knows what to do. And then we're going to go over to this other function. We're going to add a comment there on what it should do. And so we sort of have to guide it along, which is why it's called Copilot and not Pilot. And so, anyways, yeah, let's see if we can get it installed here.
Yep. So you want to go to the extensions tab of your Codespace, right? So this button here, and you want to search for just Copilot, and it should be the top one. There we go. Your AI pair programmer. Make sure it's from GitHub, and then install in Codespaces. And this will work if you're logged in a Codespace, so it'll use your account, and so it will either start a free trial, I think, or you can sign up for like the student GitHub student pack and get this for free as long as you're a student. So maybe we should actually drop that link as well, the GitHub student pack. I don't know if you have it readily available.
Yeah, I think they have it in chat. That's perfect.
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Awesome.
Cool. So now it's installed, and I don't actually know if I need to do anything else. It says it's enabled here.
Yeah, just try hitting enter somewhere and seeing if it adds some stuff in.
Cool. So maybe we can just to see here. What do you suggest? Okay, so here it wants to move us. So we have a game width. Is that a thing? Well, sometimes it can make things up that aren't a thing. I don't know if game width. Do we have that? Okay, no, it just made up a variable. So that's something you'll see as well. Sometimes it will like hallucinate, you can call it, and make things that don't make sense. But it's hard to blame it because it's hard for it to know what we want to do here. It's not like an obvious thing here. But maybe we can say, okay, here it actually suggests a comment now. Set the player's position to the center of the screen. And maybe that's what it was doing. Okay. Well, we'll see if this changes anything. I think it might have. I can't remember. Maybe we can change it to... Actually, let's change the positions to the left. And we can ask it to like automatically... Okay, it comes out with the game width again. Oh, well. I was hoping this is probably going to give us an error. Yeah, okay. That's also one thing we could bring up. Like, if you have an error, you'll probably see it in the JavaScript console here. So you can access that. I'm in Firefox now, but in Chrome, I think it's Control-Shift-I. You should be able to right-click the browser and then see what your error is. And here you can see, or actually, you probably can't see. There we go. Game width is not defined. So yeah, it's making that up.
So one more thing I will mention, just as we're coming to the end of the hour, in the last like 10, 15 minutes here, first of all, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in chat. We'd love to go through a few of them. But I also want to see people in chat talking about what you might try with like the design, what types of things you might be interested in doing. Or like more specifically, how would you change this game to be something more creative? And so yeah, feel free to put those in chat. We'll take a look at them closer to the end here. And then, yeah, we'll dive into code for about 5 more minutes here. I'll try to
For
find
sure.
something on my end that we can...
Yeah, so I think one thing we do is well, as I'm play testing this now, and this would be hard for you at home to like get a feel, but usually you want to be playtesting your game and like feeling how does it feel to play this game. And right off the bat, I can so let's start over here. And if I am like click 3 times really fast, so I'm gonna do now 1, 2, 3, I almost instantly die or hit the roof. And if I go up again and I do the same thing, oh, oops, not like that. Oh, I did it again. So if we have gravity downwards, now 1, 2, 3, I almost didn't move. So the jump velocity that I add to the ball doesn't counteract, well, it counteracts gravity, but the gravity is like also included in that calculation, which makes it kind of feel weird because I don't know. Every time I press, I'm not sure how far the ball is going to go. It really depends on how much gravity is applied to the ball at once right now. So I think that's something that I think you should be doing. You should be playtesting your game and like figuring out, okay, what's actually how could I make this feel a lot more better to play. So I think something I would like is to like make every jump, every time I press, I want the ball to have the exact same like velocity, like the curve, and because now it's inconsistent depending on how the ball is moving at the time. So I think that's something we can maybe use Copilot to figure out where to do that. So we probably want to start by finding a jump function. Do you want to?
So as you're doing that, I'm just
Yeah.
going to mention a few things that we have here in chat. So one
Wonderful.
person mentioned something that we did want to bring up, and so someone said recreate Mario or the Chrome Dino game, and so the thing I want to mention from that is those do have very good feeling jumps. One thing Marcus and I both like wrote into our documentation ahead of time was talk about Mario jump, because when it comes to game design, one of the really cool kind of principles is game feel and polish, and the fact that when you think of Mario jumping, Mario doesn't jump very much like we do in the real world. It doesn't he doesn't follow normal physics, but instead he follows physics that feel really good in the context of a platformer game. And so, and same thing with the Chrome Dino game. I think like, it's just like really fun to hit the space bar and see a little dinosaur jump. And so that's sort of like what we want to try and do is not just find over iteration like what works good, but we want to find what other people like, how other people interpret it. And just because we're able to beat our game doesn't necessarily mean that playtesters will be able to do the same or find it as easy. Some other games that I think do really well in this context. So I think Celeste's movement system is really, really solid. A lot of work was put into that. Most platformers that people enjoy have really good movement, and some don't. Like I know, like if you think of like Bennett Foddy, I forgot what the game name is, but
Getting over it.
Getting over it, exactly. That one's movement system is specifically is very complex. It's not very fun, I think, until you get good at it. It's there's like a very high skill ceiling. But anyways, Marcus, I'll hand it back over to you here.
Right, so I looked around in the code a little bit, and I was looking for jump. Couldn't really find anything, but I looked at the inputs here because we know that every time I press something, the player jumps. And so I was looking here at devices. We have some sort of we can say we can use a mouse and touch, and we have some helpful comments here, and then we can see always this on player flight is called, and that kind of sounds right. It kind of sounds what I want. So I click that, and we can see that here we are actually adding the jump velocity or the flight velocity. And so maybe Copilot can figure this out. So maybe I can just explain the symptoms and it will figure it out for me. So let's say the jump feels a bit inconsistent because gravity because gravity is not the same every frame or something. So we should fix it with this line. And let's see if it figures something out. Okay, so it says that if we set the velocity, the y velocity, specific, the vertical velocity is 0, then this should probably be fixed. So Copilot kind of understands my comment and kind of understands the context of our code. And it says, okay, if you set the vertical velocity to nothing, so we counteract gravity right before we jump, then that should do it. So let's see if that worked. And well, it's hard for you to see now because you can't see me press, but Yeah, this looks a lot better because now even if I'm falling down, let's see, like that, every time I press, I go exactly the same amount of like height when I jump. And if I spam 3 times, let's see, actually, 1, 2, 3, I don't fly up to the sky anymore. So this to me feels a lot more um, like it's harder to predict what I'm doing as a player. But you might want the other way. You might want gravity to like sort of add some difficulty to the game as well. That's fair too. Kind of like you said, with getting over it, that is supposed to be sort of a frustrating game because you get reset once you fail, and it's. But yeah, it's a charm to the game. Also to have like difficult aspects.
Yeah,
Raises
absolutely.
the skill ceiling. Yeah.
And a few, actually, if I could get you to go back over to the issues tab, let's just take a look at.
Yes.
We have one issue that we created. That so it's called, I think, post. What did I call it? Or maybe I didn't merge it in time. That's also a possibility. Anyways, essentially stuff that we think would be really cool to do afterwards. There's some extra thoughts that we had on finishing up this workshop. And so one of the things that we were talking about is sort of game feel around how easily you let the player lose. And so Marcus, if you want to just go back to the game for a second, one of the things that I was seeing is that as you sort of get close to the pillars, if you touch it at all, that's game over. And so there's this idea of coyote time, which Marcus introduced to me, which is like if the player touches it, let them touch it just a little bit, give them like a little bit more leniency on how close you can get, so that maybe if they, for example, this is a 3D game, and so maybe if there's like a little bit of a perspective mistake, it's not going to punish the player as easily. Marcus, you also brought up some points about maybe some like polish that you could add to the game afterwards. So like, what kinds of polish things would you add to this if you had time?
Right. I would probably I'm a sucker for audio. I think audio makes every game like almost twice as good. And you don't really understand that before you actually add it. Like if I were to add like a jump effect to whenever I jump, and maybe like a coin pickup thing or something when I score. Obviously the score isn't working here, and that's also I don't know if you mentioned, but that's on purpose so you can kind of dig around in the code and figure out, well, what kind of scoring system do you want? Do you want to give the player points when they pass through one of these, or do you want to give them points based on how long they've been alive? Do you want to add like pickups that you have to like? So maybe I don't only need to care about the pillars here. Maybe I need to like grab a collectible down here and then go up again and get a point like that. It's really up to you. But yes, so I would add sound effects and music. I think that's super, like, people usually underestimate how much that makes a difference because it really starts feeling like a game when you add those. I think so that's something I could look into. I would look into, and then also just game feel. I think is important. Try to play around with how does it feel? How can I make it feel better? Maybe you want some sort of like more velocity or bigger gaps or smaller gaps, and just tweaking stuff like that. I mean, you could go on and on. It could be like visual stuff, like adding all the or changing all the sprites. I think that would be cool for everyone to try out, like changing the model to something of their own. Check the documentation if you can find anything to do that. Maybe ask Copilot to just write a comment like, okay, I want to import my own custom model here. How do I do that? Maybe Copilot spits out something cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll just point out a few other things I'm seeing in chat of other people's recommendations. And so
Mhm.
I see some other ideas of what we can change the font to. Someone mentioned fix the score counter. So yes, this is very much something that we want you to try out. As Marcus said, figure out what scoring system you want for yourself. Maybe like one thing that could be cool is like score goes down over time, and so you have to figure out how to like keep it up or something like that. What else do we have? So one person, I love this one a lot. Someone said they're planning on adding instructions, and the reason I think this is super cool is because as soon as you start adding instructions, that also adds the ability for you to add some more story to the game. So give some context as to why is the flying cube flying. So add a little bit of story in there. That's a great thing to do. I want to change the shape and I want to make it like an airplane. I love that. Yeah, like I think there's probably a way that you can add a few shapes that are beside each other. So maybe it's like a sphere at the front of a like a triangle or something. So maybe doing some of that. Someone said add a collision physics to make it look more natural when the game is over. Yeah, so that's a pretty good one, making it so at the edge of the game it's a little bit nicer. Change the background color a little bit. Marcus, anything you see in there that that stands out to you?
Yeah, I saw some. Let's see. Yeah. Also, I saw one comment that I don't think we brought up, but yeah. Also, as you're like changing the colors and adding more sprites, also like being mindful of color blindness and like accessibility is super important too. Like some people might not want or like be able to play a super complex game, or they might not be able to be like tell the difference between red and green. So you want to make sure that also you make the game fun for everyone and not just for yourself, really, and just keeping that stuff like that in mind too. Because now we have red and green. For some people, these are kind of going to look the same color. In this case, it doesn't really matter because you can see the difference in the shapes, but you can imagine where it's like if I have the ball changes colors depending on if you are allowed to jump or not. So maybe it's red if you can't jump and green if you can jump. Then all people wouldn't be able to see that if they have color blindness and stuff. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I think it's important.
Yeah,
Good
and one
point.
more I'm seeing here, a great question. Can we do this in iOS? And yeah, absolutely. What we're building here is a website that you can go to on iOS, Android, a tablet, anything at all, because it will just load up into the browser and you're able to do the touch screen as the interaction. And so that's another great point, though, is like as you build out your games, the more interactions that you add, maybe it's like more keys or anything like that, you do have to take into consideration on what devices you might want people to play that on. And so, for example, with iOS, it wouldn't really do so well if you added the requirement to pressing the E key. And so keeping it just touches on the screen is pretty good. All right. So I think we can wrap it up here. It's been a ton of fun. I was super excited to talk about this. I think for both Marcus and I, we've done quite a lot of work in the past with teaching other people how to do game development. So this was an awesome opportunity to kind of be able to walk through a game, talk a little bit about our ideas of game design and game development. Yeah, so it's been a ton of fun. Yeah, so I think we can hand it back over to MLH.
Thank you, Aaron.
Awesome, y'all. Well, thank you so much, Forrest and Marcus. This was a really awesome and interactive workshop for us. So, if anyone else has any questions, just feel free to hit us up in Discord. Make sure you drop your questions there. I'll try to also provide some of the details from this workshop there as well. So, the Babylon documentation and some of the links that we've been using. We'll go ahead and add that to the registration page for the workshop, so you can refer back to there. And we'll also add it under the challenges section on the website. So you'll be able to find everything that you need to complete your version of Flappy Bird. Yeah. And with that being said, thanks for joining us. And I guess we'll see y'all next time. Keep it locked in because we have a lot more cool stuff coming up in Global Hack Week. So until then, later, y'all.